Hello everyone, this is Kieran from Keys Minis. Today we're painting a Dark Angel. So from a black primer spray, we're going to undercoat this in Caliban Green. Like I said in many of my videos recently, I prefer to work on really thin layers, so almost glaze consistency, but a very thin coat of 1 to 2 layers. You can get a really good coverage with Caliban Green if you're just using a thin layer, but glazing, yeah, you're probably talking around 3 or 4 good coverages, 3 or 4 layers to get a really good coverage. With this tutorial, I really push the extremes of my edge highlighting. I don't normally go to the extremes I do in this, but because it's such a big, bulky and chunky model, I kind of wanted to show as much of it as possible. I shot ridiculous amounts of footage actually for this one, so I apologise if some of it didn't work out, just because I'm still again trying to figure out my filming capacities in the areas, and some of the edge highlights were really difficult to film. I had to adjust the angles quite a lot, but yeah, just thin layers. Glazing again, like I said, I did about four coats. You can, I'll mention it as well, I only focus on the armor edge highlighting in this video. I did film the Aquila, but for some reason my camera didn't record the later stages. It's really finicky if I don't catch it right. So I will do when I get chance to do another Dark Angel real soon, I'll film the process of how I did the Aquila, and also lenses as well. And I'm just focusing on the green armor, not like the back. I can't remember what they're called, but the back bits as well. The like that spongy material there where the joints are. I forgot what they call it in law now. Next stage, you can actually just go with a base coat with this if you want to skip ahead, but I like to come from a lighter green. It's a 50-50 mix of Caliban Green and Abaddon Black, or any black really you can utilise. And again, I'm just working in, I think I did around 2 layers of this. My inspiration for my kind of Dark Angels look is the classic 2nd edition book, with the Dark Angels on front. I can't remember whether it was a War Gear book or whatever, but it was just such a big impact on mine. Obviously, when I was younger, obviously that was kind of more blacky, but I kind of wanted to drop the tones to that kind of darker look. But by working from the Caliban Green and lighter colour first, it's easier to shade down to, sorry, and it just gives, for my opinion, it looks better. I think it's got a better contrast across the model. But you can always just go straight to this stage. I have done on the past models as well, and use this as a base coat as well, because it makes it again covers really well. Just depends how dark you want to go. I had a lot of fun painting Dark Angels. They're like the first army I felt, well, this first Space Marine chapter I grew affinity for when I was younger, partly because I loved Sharp and the 95th Rifles, and these guys wore green. So when I was a kid and I first come across Warhammer, the green dudes looked more appealing to me than some of the other guys, though I did like Blood Angels as well. But yeah, here it is after roughly 2 coats. Just gives a nice coverage, darkens it up. Now using Abaddon Black, I'm just gonna work around and kind of block in some of the shadows, and obviously like these, I don't know what they call these vents here, but working under any of the like kind of armor panels, and just creating a shadow effect or a deep shadow, black lining across the underneath. Take your time. This can be quite a time consuming process, so yeah, just really take your time with this and work it out. Again, I've tried to show as much of it as possible. I've probably shown a little bit too much, but take your time, work around each panel highlight. With the Aggressors especially, compared to like the Primaris Marines, there are a lot of panels. There's a lot of areas to cover, so obviously, like, I don't know what these little bits are with the like square bits in. Just work your way around. Try and use a thinner brush. I made a mistake of not using my thinnest brush, my best point on the brush, so as you can see I have to wipe a few excesses off. Also black in the eyes, and I know I didn't cover the armor panels, but you can obviously blacken those joint panels as well, just so you can work on them. Normally when I work on that, I'll just mention the colours I work with on that. I usually do an Eshen Grey first highlight, a Dawnstone second highlight, and then a really thin third highlight of Administratum Grey. On the Aggressors, I didn't really bother with them because they're so well hidden behind wires and that. It was just, if I was competition painting, it's something I'd do, but because this is mainly just for my army, I didn't want to do that. I just left them. I've not covered any of the silvers or anything else. I'll do them in future videos. I'll work on guns and other things as I get a little bit better at some of the filming, because getting some of the shots really is quite a difficult thing. In my current setup, the camera will change several times in this because I'm still trying to find that best way. So now we're going to work on the first highlight, which is a 50-50 mix of Caliban Green and Warpstrone Glow, and it's quite kind of a thick highlight. So you might firstly try kind of trace it in first, and it might be quite thin, then just work back over the area and build up the highlight. Like I said, with these, I went to the extreme of painting of highlighting pretty much every panel I could. Normally I kind of tone it back, and even with my final edge highlights, I pretty much highlighted everything, but I just wanted to try and push my limits and progress as much as I can in edge highlighting. I've still got a long way to go. I'm not as sharp as some. I'm getting a little bit tidier with things, but it's all about practicing, because I haven't painted a marine in probably a few months now. It's like anything, any technique you're learning on, you just got to keep recovering the skill and keep practicing it and honing it, and you get quicker with each kind of thing you do. So I'm very slow at this moment, but I suppose like now, if I got another marine out and painted straight away, the process would be twice as fast as what doing it was on this particular aggressor. This actual thick highlight didn't take me too long, probably around 20 minutes across the model. It's when I get to the next stages that it took me a lot longer. And again, worrying about filming, that adds a whole different kettle of fish into it. I'm going to just mention something here while I can, while we're just working across this face mask. I have a Patreon page, and from January I'm going to be releasing videos on there roughly 2 days before they release on this YouTube channel. It's all linked in the description below. I really don't expect anyone to go subscribe at the minute or follow it at the minute, because I'm still building that page up, but later on I'm going to just keep mentioning it and plugging it, and if people want to support me in any way they can. I've got a few tiers there that people can support me on. Yeah, I'm hoping to do a lot more on there and I've got a Discord server set up, and I just want to build a bit of a community and help people a little bit more as well, so the tiers will build on that. But yeah, just take your time. And this, obviously I'm showing really extremes of this, so you wouldn't really need to do this head part because it's so well hidden in the Gravis Armour panel. So now we're working on our third highlight, which is a thinner layer of just Warpstrone Green on its own. You kind of work at around 50% of the highlight that you've just done. It can be tricky sometimes to do. Just again, take your time with this one. Really just take your time, but this is also a good time you can start creating and adding effects to the armor. So you can add like weather into the armor as well, and you can really hone that armor to the best of its ability and add scratches and go as wild as you want. Some people like to go heavy with the weathering. I keep it quite simple, just a few dots here and there, and the process gets shown off in a little bit. But for now, obviously I'm just working on the panels on the helmet. Very time consuming, because with edge highlighting and highlighting in general, you've got to clean your brush off quite a lot. You don't want the paint to dry within the bristles of the brush, because that can really damage your brush. So you've got to work I'm using a very thin brush. I think here it's only a 00. I normally actually use a size 1 at this point, but the brush that I was using for the previous highlight, it's lost a bit of its point, so it wasn't effective enough to get the highlight. So when you're working with an edge highlight as well, before you do the highlight, especially in the next phase, you want to wipe as much of a little bit of the excess off the brush as well on your foam or on a paper towel before you get in, because if you go straight in from taking I'm using a wet palette, but if you go straight in from taking the paint from the wet palette, it obviously then it just leaves a big pool. It kind of pulls straight away in that first area, and I do it from time to time. I forget. We all do it as painters. You try to rush sometimes, or you're trying to do things, so just really take your time. If you want really sharp edge highlights, I mean, I'm getting better at it, and I'm not the sharpest of them. There are painters far better, but to really get better at it, it's just take that extra care, wipe the brush off, and you'll get that better highlight, and work the area a couple of times. I'm quite sketchy here, being with the area, because I'm trying to get the best coverage I possibly can. So here, as you can see, I'm just wiping the excess off. I probably didn't wipe enough off on this bit, but yeah, just work over the area to draw that line in a little bit more. Work back and forwards. You can be a bit cleaner than I am here, and work smoother lines, work in one direction, then go back to the beginning. That's always better. When I'm working on these little points here, obviously I'll cover that in the next stage, but I'm working around them. But now we're going on to our third highlight, and this is pure Moot Green. Sometimes I used to transition between a 50-50 Moot Green and Warpstrone Glow, but I just felt it added too much extra to the process, and I wasn't really getting enough out of that. I suppose if you did do that, you could, because like I said, I went to the extreme with the highlights here. You could really draw them back and make them you could do that process and work a larger area, and not go as extreme as I've gone on this. But again, it's the same process. I'm using my with this, I've gone to my fine detail brush, which I like to use, which is a Rosemary & Co. I can't remember what type of brush it is, 3S3 or S33, whatever they are. They're kind of like almost similar to OP, but a little bit cheaper. I know there's a little bit of difference in the brushes, but a really good brush. And for the price, I think it's around £6 UK, £6.30 from Hobby Workshop, my local, which is, I think I've got a link in the description for anyone in the UK. Very good shop. I did a little short yesterday that showcased. They've helped me because I'm part of a charity, and I'm going to be paying for that this year. And yeah, so really good shop, and if you want to get any of these brushes, I do recommend them. They have a few selections. I've only got this one. I just needed it because I needed something as a bridge gap, because my Armour MIG brushes is wore out. It's the same process as the last one, but we're working on a smaller area. We're really trying to hit that edge highlight now, and just work on the edges of this model, as in, like you can see, I was still sketching and drawing in some of that areas. This is where you can also add a little bit more detail to some of the scratches. I didn't do it on this one, but when you do like this final highlight on some of the scratches, you can then go back in with like Rhine oxide as well, and define them a little bit more, or a black, and add a little dot underneath it, so it looks even more pot marked and weathered and damaged that you can go. I just didn't push it that far on this model. I was quite happy with what I have achieved. It was to test how I painted this model roughly a year ago, and I was just seeing how much further I pushed my edge highlighting and how extreme I could go to it. Like I said, I've highlighted a lot of panels I wouldn't usually do to this extreme, but I think that's a good process as well. If you learn to highlight and edge highlight, and you want to learn to get better at stuff, is really push the level. Even on a miniature that's like this, yeah, it'll go in my army. It's not a perfect one. I didn't do it up to kind of competition standard. I did it to a decent standard, and one that I'm happy with. but then push those limits to the extreme I could. Oh, this is where I do it now, where I'm working on those little square parts of the panel. I think this is where I do it. It might be in a second. Sorry about this. This is what I'm saying about just trying to figure out the best kind of shots. I'm working around the area that's around there. I've got a terrible cold at the minute, so I do apologise. So here, when I'm working on these square bits, I'll work on both. So as you can see, I've turned the panel here. I'll work on both lines. So this line here at the top and the bottom line, and then I'll spin the model round and then work it in the same way on the other direction. It's just easy to. I found it's easy to do that. I got a great tip from James from Siege Studios when about doing them, because I used to just try and draw them in, and I could never get the finish I wanted. Still got to get better at some of that, but that's the whole learning process, especially around some of these like those vents and stuff. That's a process I'm still learning to highlight a little bit better. But yeah, just so you can see, I've worked one area, then I've flipped it, and that's the thing with edge highlighting as well. Keep changing the position to meet the model. And then this is the final highlight. It's just Moot Green and a 65 mix with some Wraithbone to really darken it out. I'm working on the fine corners now, just the corners of the armour, like the panels, the ones that I'd really hit the light as much as possible and showcase of the model, and that's it. A very small area. You could take it to the extreme after and use another just pure Wraithbone highlight and just put on the final points, like over on these points on this part of the armor here, right at the top. You could just add in another like really small dot highlight as well, and I think that'd add some even more oomph to that look. Or you could drop in with some white as well to up the contrast a little bit more and pop, make things pop. But I just found this, normally I usually, when I was used to do them, I just used to stick at the Moot Green and that was it. But I found like just pushing those little highlights a little bit further, it just gives it a little bit more pop in some areas, and just makes the whole thing stand out. And if I want a model to really look a little bit better, that's what I'm ultimately trying to achieve. I want things to really stand out a little bit more than what I usually would. Competition painting, I would tone back some of these highlights and work on smaller areas. So when I'm doing like the Moot Green, I'd just use even more smaller areas. Right, this is I'm using a Ushanti Bone, and I'm just going to draw in this, like some Dark Angels have this like pattern here, and it's kind of a cross. So on the right knee, no, the left knee pad, sorry, on the Dark Angel, I draw across and using a Ushanti Bone, and I'm just then going to sketch in and cover this area around 4 layers. It took 2, 3, 4 layers because it's a really lighter colour, and I used some contrast medium with it to mix it in. I find with those, you get, with lighter colours like that, you get a little bit of a smoother finish if you use some medium as opposed to water. We all know like some of the whites, certainly of Citadel colours and other colours, can be really grainy finish. So yeah, just use some contrast medium. And I apologise because I'm just slightly off camera, but I'll bring it back up in a minute and you'll see me working the process. Just sketching around the curves to bring the lines together, and then obviously colouring your middle section. If at any point, like when the area wasn't fully tidied up, or I went back with the Caliban Green and 50/50 Abaddon Blacks and just kind of drew it out, and I also added some scratches on that as well. And here's the finished model. Like I said, I pushed the highlights to more extreme than I normally do, but I had a lot of fun trying this, and I'll cover other details in other videos, weapons and the colours and other things as well. Sadly, while I was sticking the base on, I got a bit of glue stuck on the arm, but I usually just sand that off and then just retouch that area up. But yeah, thank you for watching. Please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm working on some Sisters of Battles for the next few videos.